Hello everyone, this is Serious Trivia. Welcome to a trailer breakdown with me. We had the release of the Mandate of Heaven's trailer today, news of the new DLC coming out for Total War 3 Kingdoms, and they put out a 10-minute video that is called a Let's Play where they show off some of the gameplay mechanics as well as news regarding the new DLC. And we're here to break it all down, so let's enjoy. So we're going to be pausing a lot to look at the things that's happening on screen. So first off, Mandate of Heaven, which will feature the Mandate War, is essentially a prequel chapter pack for the Total War 3 Kingdom base game. So once again, we'll be moving ahead of time starting in the year 182, where we can play as either the Yellow Turban Rebellion factions, the Han Empire factions, or some of the old Warlords factions as their origin story. This almost makes me feel like this is the way the game should have been for the base game, where you can start out as an upstart warlord who are still under the Han Empire and decide if you want to work your way to restore the Han or go off on your own and become a new emperor. Or you can start out as Yellow Turbans and try to push your belief onto the people and gain the Mandate of Heaven yourself. Or you can play as the Han Empire, as Emperor Ling or Liu Hong, and be able to restore the Han to its former glory. So lots of options, lots of new factions, and it connects into the base game. But we're essentially getting an earlier start date. And in this start date, the Mandate Wars is shown here. We have two main sides, the Yellow Turban Rebellion side and the Han Empire side. And if we focus on the screen here for a second, we have the Yellow Turbans led by the three Zhang brothers, Zhang Jiao, Zhang Liang, Zhang Bao, and they have a shared pool resource. So there's three factions that you can play, one led by each of the brothers, but their faction unique resource in the game is shared between all three of them. And that resource is called Zeal, and it marks the fury determination of the followers of the Yellow Turbans. When high, it grants powerful bonuses to fervor and income, but at low levels will cause strife within your lands. It is raised by conquering territories and fighting battles, but will diminish over time. Each faction also has a specific effect on Zeal. Zhang Jiao's faction is Zeal is earned by taking casualties in battle and grants replenishment bonuses. Zhang Bao's faction earns through attacking enemies and give bonuses when attacking. Zhang Liang earns through defending against your enemies and brings bonuses when defending. So this represents three different playstyles. Two of it seems more offensive, Zhang Jiao and Zhang Bao, and Zhang Liang seems very defensive. This could be a very interesting multiplayer mechanic for when you play a campaign with your friend, where you could play as two of the brothers and assign yourself to different tasks while sharing the same resource pool. Could be very interesting. And fervor that you gain from Zeal is used to gauge support in your rebellion, spread to enemy settlements, causing local unrest and decreasing public order. Local fervor will spread from region to region as you build up your forces and your influence grows. So fervor here seems to be a mixture of public order and like a religion almost from Shogun 2, where you build up support for your rebellion cause. And after all, the Yellow Turbans do believe in Taoism. They call themselves Taiping Jing. They hail Lao Tzu, who has a quote in the beginning of the trailer, who is the founder of Taoism, the philosophy. And later generations like Zhang Jiao kind of changed it into a religion. But theirs obviously failed with the failure of the Yellow Turban Rebellion. But here, you do get that sense of you're spreading your beliefs to different regions, and it impacts public order, triggering new rebellions, much like in the base game, to set you up to expand in a different way, similar to how the headquarter building worked in the old Yellow Turban DLC. And all three of these Yellow Turban factions will have a new reform tree, which is shown here. This is from the Steam shops page. That's very beautiful. You get four distinct branches representing four different areas of focus. And it kind of reminds me of the spring, summer, fall, winter, 春夏秋冬, and the four trees, 梅兰竹菊. It's a very traditional Chinese thing. And in the Han Empire side here, we used the might of the Imperial army to crush the Yellow Turban Rebellion. Finally, the Imperial army is strong, and you have three main factions you can play representing the Han Empire. as well as a bunch of other factions you can play that's from the old game. So the 3 new ones that we have is Liu Hong, Liu Chong, and Luger. So Liu Hong here is the emperor himself. He is playable, but you cannot deploy him on the battlefield. So you can click him, give him items, assign him to positions. I guess you can't really assign him to positions because he's just the emperor. And you are mainly playing as him with his wife, Empress He, and the wife's brother, your brother-in-law, General He Jin. And your job is basically as a government bureaucrat, managing the eunuchs, managing your own dynasty or your family, and also the relationship with generals. So it's really similar to the Lyman game from the 8 Princes, but in a much more extreme way, where you have to kind of save the Han dynasty. Liu Chong, we mentioned him in our lore series on the Yellow Turbans on the channel. He is a lesser known but very, very talented member of the royal household during the early periods of the Three Kingdoms. I guess predating the Three Kingdoms, late Han dynasty. So he is known as the King of Chen. Chen is the area of land that Cao Cao used to start at in the base game. And he was assassinated by Zhang Kai, who, as you all know by now, if you've seen the lore series, was not a Yellow Turban general. He was a general under Tao Qian, but saw that Cao Cao's dad Cao Song had a lot of wealth while escorting him. So he killed him and ran off with the wealth, and eventually landed a job with Yuan Shu. And since Yuan Shu neighbors Liu Chong, and the two of them had a bit of a feud when they were part of a coalition against Dong Zhuo, Yuan Shu sent out Zhang Kai again as an assassin to kill Liu Chong under the pretense of agreed military access through his land. So Liu Chong died before the start of the whole Three Kingdoms era. Otherwise, his kingdom of Chen was a very powerful one, and I'm very glad to see that he's playable in the game, and he has a very different gameplay mechanism, which we'll cover very soon. And lastly, the third new Han Empire faction we're getting with this DLC is Luger. Now, in the base game, he was there. He was a generic sentinel. Now, he was known as a scholar general. So the game went full out with the scholar side, making him what seems like a strategist with the blue color scheme and the robes in-game. Now, he was a well-known government official of the time, but he was also well known to be a student of Confucius studies, which is called Rujia. On the other hand, you had Taiping Jing and the Yellow Turbans, which is called Daojia, and they hailed the writings of Dao De Jing and Lao Tzu, while Luger and them hailed the writings of Confucius. So he also gets some interesting gameplay mechanics from that. And lastly, we have our new free LC Lord. So Tao Qian is going to join the roster of playable characters from the Mandate of Heaven DLC. He's part of the free LC, so you're going to get him as a playable faction in the DLC and in the base game. And you don't need to purchase anything. You can just download the free LC on the release date of January 16th, and you get a new warlord to play with. Now, we already know a lot about Tao Qian, and he's portrayed a little differently in the game than he is in history. And culturally speaking, he's always been portrayed as this old ruler who dies and gives off his land wisely to Liu Bei. But in reality, he was a pretty fierce general and did a lot of battles with Cao Cao as Cao Cao was expanding. So let's read the descriptions. So we represent the Empire. By reaching the faction level of the Emperor, you will gain access to new diplomatic options. So this is if you decide to challenge Liu Hong and if you don't play as him. And the Imperial Court, by reaching the faction of Emperor, you gain access to the Imperial Court, which grants you extra positions in the court. We're going to see this a little bit later on in this Let's Play trailer, where we'll see a very different court structure with many, many positions, and where you have to balance the will of different factions, like the bureaucrats or like the eunuchs, with those of the generals and those of your whole family, the dynasty. And the unique faction mechanisms for these new factions here. Liu Hong, use your political resource to restore order to your imperial court as your royal ministers wrestle for control with the eunuchs. So I'm glad to see all of the 10 eunuchs become playable characters in the game. Liu Chong, by achieving great feats in battle, you will gain trophies. Place these in your trophy cabinet to gain unique effect. So they're making him really like, I don't want to say show off, but like a beacon of hope, I guess is a good way to put it, for the Han Dynasty. Liu Hong, I don't know if you guys know this in history, but we're going to do a lot of lore on him. We touched a little bit about it in many of our lore series. He ascended the throne, and he was very interested in gathering wealth. You're going to see this in the beginning of the game where you have a huge treasury. And he gained this wealth by selling government positions to officers and to court officials. And how he did it was, okay, I'm going to promote you to this position. And the salary for this position is X amount of rice per year. So a lot of the salary for a government position was granted through food. And food was a very valuable resource at the time. So since you're getting this salary, you have to pay me a corresponding amount of gold up front to get this position. So it's like, let's say I'm a great general who scored a great victory on the battlefield. So I get promoted for my victory. But in return, I have to bribe the government, quote unquote, my emperor and the eunuchs with cash to ascend to my newly earned position. And if I don't pay up, I get in trouble with the emperor. That's why people like Luger, who was on the front lines of defeating the Yellow Turbans in the beginning and had some success, got into trouble with the government right after, because his success was rewarded with a promotion, but because he wasn't a corrupt individual, he didn't want to pay up to accept the promotion, and then they effectively got sacked by the emperor and the eunuchs, and then led to a lot of setbacks in the war against Yellow Turbans, which was going pretty smoothly in the beginning. Now, next character is Luger, who we just talked about, and he's by achieving set objectives, you will earn tomes. Place these in the Great Library to gain unique effects. Combine sets to gain even greater set bonuses. So this is kind of similar to Liu Chong's ability to gather trophies. You're gathering tomes of classical literatures or tomes of war manuals, I'm assuming, and you can have a certain amount of slots in the great libraries. So I read somewhere, I'm guessing it's the frequently asked questions on the blog page. I think you get 5 slots for both the trophies and the tomes, and you can pick and choose which one to place there to get different set bonuses to help your gameplay. So it'd be a pretty interesting new game mechanism for these two factions. One represents, war and battle, or Wu, and one represents scholar or court, bureaucrat, or Wen. Wen Wu is kind of the balance here. Lastly, you have Tao Qian, the new free LC lord. He deals with population. There's a displacement mechanism in the game now where you might not have the population in your cities giving you bonuses, but they're still going to cost you food and replenishment. And Tao Qian has mechanisms to deal with that. So that's all with this. Let's continue with this video.
Join me playing as Emperor Liu Hong. Yes, that's correct. For the first time in Total War 3 Kingdoms, you can play as the main Han himself.
All right, we're pausing again. Sorry, this is going to happen a lot in this video because it's mainly about my commentary. You can watch this video anytime you want. So a couple of things to notice here. First, on the bottom of the screen, you can pick your start date in the campaign map. 182 is the start of Mandate of Heaven. 190 is the start of the base game. 291 is the start of 8 Princes, and if you notice this huge gap in between, the 100-year gap in between, I'm sure we're going to get new chapter packs to fill that for later periods of 3 Kingdom. Very excited for the way they put this in and kind of foreshadow what we're going to get ahead. And this is kind of the start of the game for Liu Hong as you're playing the Emperor. He's very hard in terms of difficulty. The only thing I see here is he gets 200% income from family estate. Sure, he's the Emperor. That makes sense. Faction specialization, Imperial prestige, increases by developing administration office buildings, used to annex factions diplomatically and release characters from court. So you actually got to gain resource to expel people from court because you have a lot of corrupt officials and eunuchs from court. So if you want to manage things right, you have to improve your administration by building an administrative office and then use that imperial privilege that you gained to start annexing, territories to gain them diplomatically or release characters that are bad for your faction from court. And unique features that you have the emperor. I'm sure the scroll is the annex function, and you get this Imperial gate guard unit. Speaking of gates and passes, someone on Twitter asked in Chinese to CA whether we're going to get gate pass battles in this DLC. The response is no, but gate pass battles will arrive in 2020. So in one of the later DLCs next year. I'm assuming maybe summer, maybe fall, we're going to get Gate Pass. So battle is going to get a lot more interesting, and it's already taking a great step in this DLC as we're getting 40 new units, deployable battlefield items that we'll see later in the game, as well as new siege weapons. So super pumped for that. And if you notice the noteworthy characters, the first face is kind of new. That's He Jin. That's the Grand General of the Han Dynasty at this period of time. He is our brother-in-law. He's the Empress's brother, and he is going to lead our main army. And then you see some familiar faces. Now remember, all those warlords in the year 190 used to work for the Han, and they're all still here in the game working for you. And if certain conditions happen, they will break off in the year 190 when the start of the game starts, or whatever historically time period is relevant for them, and they will split off in events to become their own factions in the game. So this is actually a really fun start, where you can start out as an effort to restore the Han or wreck the Han, and as the game progresses towards the Three Kingdom historical time period, if certain conditions are met, you're going to have these new factions that you're familiar with pop up in your game with these new gameplay mechanism in place. So very pumped for that. And if you notice the map, there's still a lot of blanks, and I am going to tell you my theory right now is that they're not going to be blanks for long, because originally we know for sure this was going to be a Yellow Turban DLC, but it's also going to be a Liang Rebellion DLC. So up in that northwest corner where it seems very blank, where you have the young version of Dongzhuo on the map, you're also going to see the Liang Rebellion happen, where you're going to have the Qiang nomadic tribe factions come in and invade. Now, how do I know this? Well, later on, there's a little clue in this trailer, and we're going to hit that when it happens. So let's continue.
Complete with its own units and mechanics. Mandate of Heaven takes place 12 years before the Three Kingdoms main campaign, making it a great jumping off point for new players, as well as veteran players who want to experience the events that began the Three Kingdoms period. Depending on how you choose to play will affect the events after 190. We start you off in the winter of 182, but you join me in the summer of 184.
Okay, so it seems like you get
all hell
2
has
years,
broken loose.
or about 10 turns, to figure things
The
out
Emperor gives you a
before
unique
the
starting position,
rebellion
never
triggers
seen
in
Three
184 as it
Kingdoms.
does in history.
As the
And you probably
Emperor,
get
you
10
start
turns
with
to build up in
everything.
peace
Land,
as the Yellow
money,
Turbans
and
before you have
power,
to rebel.
for your empire is on the brink of collapse.
Alright, we're pausing again because we have a map. This isn't the beginning of the game map because it's year 184. But if you notice on that beginning of the game map, we didn't have Han Sui and Ma Teng on the left side of the map here. We didn't have Han Sui and Ma Teng on the left side of the map here. So something is going to happen in the Liang province, and it's going to be the Liang Rebellion, and we're going to see that. I'm pretty sure as the news of the DLC filter out week by week, they're going to drop little pieces of it, and we're only getting pieces of the news now. And I'm already super excited. So we still see Dongzhuo on the top, and you see to the middle here, next to Dongzhuo is Ding Yuan. Now, Ding Yuan was the previous employer of Lu Bu, and Lu Bu called him his adopted father. That's kind of in the novel. Historically, it's not really proven. But when they joined forces, or the forces of Ding Yuan and Dongzhuo met, Dongzhuo was captivated by how strong Lu Bu was and bribed him with the red hair, because he's in the west next to the animal tamers, and he has access to this supposedly heavenly horse that's like a relic left over from the Romans and the Han Empire early on in history. But Lu Bu gets super attracted by this horse and kills Ding Yuan before joining Dongzhuo. And Dongzhuo expands his force by absorbing basically Ding Yuan's power as well, who was pretty much on par with him. This really made Dongzhuo very strong in terms of the number of men he had, and also he got Lu Bu, which, by himself is basically an army. And you see in the pink, you have the 3 Zhang brothers. They start out in that region and expand. This is already 10 turns into the game, so things are going to be a little different. Liu Bei is back in his historical start in the year 190. It's not very historical for him to start here now. He should be still selling shoes, sandals, straw-made sandals at this point in history. But he is in Pingyuan. That's fine. And you see Liu Yu, a lot of very familiar small factions still on the map. You see some of these new factions, Liu Hong in the dark green, and then Liu Chong right next to him in Chen. Well, technically here is in Chuan, but around the Chen area. Yuan Shu is south of him. That's why they got the grudge going on. Liu Biao is still on the map. And then out west, in Chengdu, in the Ba Lands, Liu Yan has entered the Ba Lands. We talked about him in another lore series when we talked about Zhang Lu, where he suggested to the emperor that we should have governor positions, and then he went into the Yi province over there. And then elsewhere, very southern tip of the map, on the right side, you see Cao Song. This is Cao Cao's dad. This area is called the Yang province. He sensed the Yellow Turban as a threat. Basically, chilled out from the capital. He used to be one of the prime minister positions. Basically, bought that job with cash. Like we said, the emperor very interested in selling jobs. And then after taking the job for 3 months, he gave up the job. He resigned so the emperor could sell it again. And the emperor was very happy with him, and he kind of retired away to the south, where he can stay safe from all the Yellow Turban rebellion in the north, because Cao Cao got started as a warlord, which we don't even see on the map, but he's going to get started very soon, later on in history. Right now, he's part of the court with the Han Empire. But once he gets started, Cao Song gets dragged up back towards Chen, eventually goes towards Beihai and Taishan, and then as he's leaving to rejoin his son, Tao Qian cuts him off and kills him, because where Cao Cao starts out, gets into conflict with Tao Qian right away. So very interested to see this map, and the blank spot's still going to get filled up. Pretty sure we're going to see the map one more time at the end. Before we go, to the left of the emperor is Yuan Yi. This guy is Yuan Shao's family, and when Dong Zhuo takes over the capital, burns it down, goes to Chang'an, and when Yuan Shao leads a coalition against him, Yuan Yi's whole family gets all murdered, making Yuan Shao the new head of the Yuan family.
Starvation grips your people, and the eunuchs have perverted the old bureaucratic ways and have infested your court.
Okay, so this is the new Emperor Court screen. I'm not going to talk about the court positions. There are tons of them. You still have the same big five on the top. They're just placed a little differently. You have your heir. I don't see a prime minister anymore, but you still have the chancellor on the right, so it's similar. And you have all the ministers below them, which are very new. I'm sure bringing in new bonuses. And you have administrators like before. Most importantly, you need to look onto the right side on the top. We have faction resources. We have a balance between 3 different factions. The first one is the bureaucrat, the second one is the dynasties, the third one is your generals. And each character here has an icon next to them showing which faction they represent. And you have to kind of balance things out by picking the right person for the job.
While the eunuchs hold majority in your court, they will give you a host of debuffs, including negative trade contracts, increased construction costs, and a massive deficit per turn. Playing as the emperor, you will have to deal with 3 major parties: the bureaucrats, dynasty, and the warlords. Each giving majority power in your court will provide different bonuses or penalties. The objectives are simple: balance your court, defeat the rebels, and above all, survive. The challenging part is knowing how. But being the emperor of a collapsing empire was never going to be easy. You may have noticed that the emperor himself isn't a character on the map. You govern from your palace. Even though the emperor and empress aren't playable characters, it doesn't mean our artists have spared any expense on their art and design. One of your greatest generals is your brother-in-law, He Jing, a fiery, dutiful leader also known as the Butcher of the He. He has a deep hatred for the eunuchs and therefore the bureaucrats. You can see he has a minus 80% upkeep for the new Imperial units, meaning your incredibly powerful Imperial army only costs you 500 per turn while He Jing is in command. Speaking of He Jing, you can see him about to engage Nanyon's Jade Mine. The Yellow Turbans have instigated their rebellion, springing ambushes all over the country. Being so close to my own province, I can't let this go unanswered. Let's show them what the might of the Empire can do. Let's take a closer look at a few of the Imperial units under your command. They come with all formations unlocked from the start, and all wear the gold and black plate armor of the finest professional fighting force China has to offer. The Imperial Sword Guard are equipped with swords, tower shields, and heavy armor. They are your ultimate frontline unit, steadfast with good morale. The Imperial Lancer Cavalry are armed with a two-handed lance and wear heavy armor. With the passive Mighty Knockback ability, which has only been seen on hero units, they have a tremendously high charge bonus. These guys will obliterate most anything that gets in their way. The Imperial Household Cavalry, with their swords and shields, can not only charge into the enemy and deal a massive amount of damage, but stick around in the thick of combat to fight instead of having to retreat, regroup, and charge again. And my personal favourite, the Imperial Palace Crossbowmen. These crossbows can be fired and reloaded with relative speed and accuracy. In the hands of these well-trained soldiers, many enemy units won't come close to your front line. I'll leave you with some highlights of my decisive victory against the rebel scum. They put up a good fight, but they were no match for the might of the Emperor's finest. The Imperial cavalry units, if used right, will decimate anything that stands in their way. But as you can see, the Imperial units have a huge replenishment penalty. And with this massive deficit I have per turn, another army would bankrupt me in short order, meaning I'll have to pick and choose my battles wisely. Let's skip ahead to the year 187. You can see I've managed to get a handle on that massive deficit and my population is doing better. Using political influence, I've removed and expelled a lot of the bureaucratic influence poisoning my court, meaning that my relationship with the other factions has been getting better, but there is still a long way to go. Political influence builds per turn. You can increase the amount with the administration office.
The building chains are still largely
here.
the same. I think just have different
Dispelling
bonuses.
distance isn't the only thing you can use political influence for. You can annex lands off your lords or anyone who has agreed to your mandated rule, or even take their cities. Of course, doing this too much will make the lord very unhappy with you, so choose your time wisely. While I've been fighting fires within my own lands and court, the Zhang brothers, led by Zhang Zhu, have grown in strength. You can see the lands north of the Yellow River have started to fall to their dogmatic doctrine. Ignoring this uprising and leaving it this long has been a big mistake. The only way I can see to stay this tide is to cut the head off the snake.
All right, pause right here. Look on the map. Zhang Yan is now on the map. So this is part of the historical additions as the game progresses towards the year 190. So Zhang Yan, technically from the Black Mountains, was part of the Yellow Turban Rebellion, but he's probably still going to be bandit faction here. Black Mountains, White Waves are just different factions within the Yellow Turban, and we had all the White Wave units as part of the base game Yellow Turban unit roster, but Black Mountain was technically just on par with the Black Waves. And I think we have slight map addition as well, because if you notice where Zhang Yan is, to his left, this seems to be a new commander here in the mountain, because this is Sihe down here, and this part used to be non-playable if I remember correctly. This is Taiyuan, and I think this is a new piece of land that's added into the game. So that's an encouraging sign that we're getting map expansions as we are moving forward. And more importantly, If we now look towards the Liang province, you still see Yuanyi, Ma Teng, but you see this guy called Bei Gong Bo Yu right here in the middle. This name doesn't sound very Chinese. If you're Chinese, you know what I'm talking about. That's because he's from the Qiang nomadic faction. He was one of the strongest Qiang nomadic factions that rode in from the north, led a strong attack against Chang'an, and repelled the first wave of Han Empire forces that tried to repel him, led by Han Fusong and Zhang Wen, and he beat them back. And he was eventually stopped by Dong Zhuo, which really built Dong Zhuo's name and established himself as a player in the West. So we're going to get to see that mechanism play out as well here. So excited to see Qiang nomadic tribes on the map. Hopefully we'll get some more news in the coming weeks about the Liang Rebellion part of this DLC as well. I'm sure the 40 new units include some nomadic tribal units as well. New siege weapons, new tribal units, new Imperial units, and new Yellow Turban units. So looking forward to that in the coming weeks.
Zhangzhou keeps to himself at the very north of the map. Not an easy place to get to, but I've spotted a weakness. His west flank is completely unguarded. Doing a rather costly deal with a young and slightly thinner Dong Zhuo has allowed me military
I don't like the fact that he's still
access
called
over
the crew
mountains,
tyrant.
allowing me to strike directly at his western flank. As you can see, I've caught him on the march. Killing him will really weaken the rebellion and may give me leverage to barter for a much needed time of peace. Let's jump into the battle. One new amazing feature
Super
are
excited about
battlefield
this.
deployables: stakes, towers, and oil. All are deployable the same as any unit. You gain them through the military branch of the tech tree. Zhangzhou has mainly infantry.
This is going to
and
change
few
a lot of the
horses.
gameplay. You can
So I'm
actually
gonna use
manipulate the
stakes to
terrain
guard
on the
my
map.
flank and drench the ground in front of me in oil, all while bombarding him with arrows. His Messengers of Heaven cavalry can do massive damage to my range units, so my first priority is to focus fire on them and not let them get too close. Here's what happened when the Butcher of the He and the General of Heaven met in the field.
That's so cool. Yeah, so aside from these deployables, you're going to get new siege towers. You're going to get new ballistas. And so we're going to see a lot of siege changes as well. So we're pretty excited for that. We're killing our own units with the arrow, guys. He has resiliency.
Order has been restored.
But of course we capture him. And execute him. Okay.
Even with their leader dead, they are resolute in their devotions. The other brothers refuse
And
my
notice here,
proposal of
Gungdu is
peace.
on the map.
Unfortunately,
So new Yellow
this
Turban
war
factions
is
are gonna
far
spawn.
from over. With hidden political battles still raging in my
And there's
courts,
Liu Bei.
the Yellow Turbans taking my lands in delusions of grandeur from my
Skinny
lords,
Dong Zhuo.
this will be a hard fight if I want my dynasty to survive long into the future. Playing the Emperor is a fun challenge that forces
Alright,
you to
Luger
think
with his student
and
Liu
play
Bei.
the game differently. The odds are stacked against you from the start, so failure is a real option. Will you go the way of history and crumble into antiquity?
So this backdrop is probably
Or can you
Luger
carry your
scored a
empire
victory,
forward into the main
went to
Three
the
Kingdoms
court,
campaign, and rebuild
and
your
messed
empire
up in
back
terms
to
of
its
not
former strength.
giving up his money to the new position.
How would you play the Emperor? Total tyrannical
Okay,
control?
so the DLC drops on January 16th.
Leave a comment
I
and let
think
us know.
you
And
can
don't
expect
forget
to
check
see
out the Mandate of Heaven
DLCs
official
from
trailer,
the
now
pre-release
live on our YouTube
access
channel.
starting a week before that, probably around January 9th. We're going to be dropping a Let's Play then. So excited for that. Lots of lore to do. We might not start a new Let's Play on the channel because I don't think we have time. We have probably less than 20 days and I want to do a lot of lore regarding all these new prequel characters, basically. And I want to finish some of these Art of War guides, which has been troubling me for the past few days. And I'm going to be doing a few multiplayer features with some fellow YouTubers on the channel as well. And I also want to play some of you guys who have subscribed to the channel. Some of you have voiced that you want to play perhaps a multiplayer campaign with me. That might take too much time coordination, but I'm happy to play some multiplayer battle with you guys. So be excited for all these new things coming this holiday season, and I can't wait to get this new DLC and hear more about it. So see you guys then. Bye!